One day, Thomas was in the yard. Suddenly, he heard an engine whistling. "Help! Help!" A freight train came rushing through much too fast. The engine was James, and he was frightened. His brake blocks were on fire. "They're pushing me! They're pushing me!" he panted. "On! On!" laughed the freight cars, still whistling, "Help! Help!" Poor James disappeared. "I'd like to teach those freight cars a lesson," said Thomas the tank engine. Soon came the alarm. "James is off the line! The breakdown train! Quickly!" James's driver and firemen were feeling him all over to see if he was hurt. "Never mind, James," they said. He rushed into a tunnel thinking how clever he was, but there was trouble ahead. "Cinders and ashes," said Thomas. "I'm stuck." And he was. "Back, Thomas, back," said his driver. Thomas tried, but his wheels spun and he couldn't move. The conductor went back for help, while everyone else tried to dig the snow away. But as fast as they dug, more snow slipped down until Thomas was nearly buried. "Oh, my wheels and coupling rods! I shall have to stop here till I'm frozen. What a silly engine I am!" And Thomas began to cry. "I want to stop! I want to stop!" he puffed. The man in the signal box saw Percy was in trouble, so he kindly set the switch. Percy puffed wearily onto a nice empty siding, ending in a big bank of earth. He was too tired now to care where he went. "I want to stop! I want to stop!" "I have stopped," he puffed thankfully. Henry's driver and fireman had jumped clear before the crash, but Henry lay dazed and surprised. Disaster lay ahead. Something sticky splashed all over James. He had run into 2 tar wagons and was black from smokebox to cab. He was more dirty than hurt. He moved slowly forward to jam the table, but he couldn't stop himself and slithered into a ditch. "Whoosh!" he hissed. "Get me out! Get me out!" "Not a hope," said his driver and fireman. "You're stuck, you silly great engine. Don't you understand that?" The fireman went to throw the switch. "Now for my plan," thought Thomas. Bumping the cars fiercely, he jerked his driver off the footplate and followed them into the siding. "Come back!" yelled his driver. "Fire and smoke," said Thomas. "I'm sunk!" And he was.
"Those buffers don't look very safe to me." The last load poured down. "Help! Help!" cried Thomas. "Get me out!" "Oh!" wailed Percy. "Help!" The buffers were broken and Percy was wheel-deep in coal.
"Go on, go on!" they yelled and bumped Percy's driver and fireman off the footplate. "Ow!" said Percy, sliding past the board. Percy was frantic. "That's enough!" Percy was sunk. He was shaving a customer. "Spite doggy, would you? Take that!" "Oh! Oh!" cried the van. Donald wasn't hurt, but Sir Topham Hatt was most annoyed. "Go steady! The van's breaking!" The van was in pieces.
There was the station master's house. The station master was about to have breakfast. "Horrors!" cried Thomas and shut his eyes. The house rocked. Broken glass tinkled. Plaster was everywhere.
Frantically trying to grip the rails, Percy slid into the yard. Beep! Beep! Look out! The brake van was in smithereens.
Suddenly, Edward's wheels slipped fiercely. With a shrieking crack, something broke. The crew inspected the damage. Repairs took some time. "One of your crank pins broke, Edward," said his driver. "We've taken your side rods off. Now you're like an old-fashioned engine."
Percy broke the cart to smithereens. Lime flew everywhere. He puffed quickly to the nearest signal box.
Then came trouble. A crate of treacle was upset all over Percy. I mustn't be late, he thought. The Fat Controller is relying on me. Whistling bravely, Thomas tried to move, but he couldn't. There was worse to come. Poor Thomas was snowed under.
But the porters didn't hear him either. Percy gave them such a fright that boxes and bags burst everywhere. "Oh!" groaned Percy. Sticky streams of jam trickled down Percy's face. A top hat hung on his lamp iron.
As he battled against the rain, more trouble lay ahead. "Oh," hissed Percy. "Gordon thought it wanted to push him off the bridge." "No, you don't," he said firmly. But the wind had other ideas. It curled around his boiler, crept under his loose dome, and lifted it off and away into the valley below. Gordon was most uncomfortable.
Just ahead was a stretch where the hot sun had bent the rails on the track. "Careful, Thomas," called his driver, but it was too late. "That's done it," said his driver. "We shan't get any further today."
Later, Diesel bumped the truck so hard that the loads went everywhere. Next day, he was shunting trucks full of china clay. He banged the trucks hard into the buffers, but the buffers weren't secure. The silly trucks were sunk.
"Slow down," called Thomas's driver and applied the brakes. Poor Thomas stood dazed and surprised in a muddy pond as a toad eyed him suspiciously. "Bust my buffers," muttered Thomas. "The day started so well, too."
The rails were now like a tightrope across the thundering water. "Stop! Stop!" cried Toby. His driver fought for control. They came nearer and nearer to the bridge. The driver braked hard. Toby stopped, still on the rails, but with his wheels treading the tightrope over the abyss.
Then there was trouble. The beehive fell and broke open. The station cleared like magic. James heard a familiar buzzing. The bees were too cold to be cross, so they buzzed around the fireman, hoping he'd mend their hive. But he didn't understand, nor did his driver, so the bees turned to James. His boiler was nice and warm. Buzz off, hissed James. One bee burnt his foot. Ooh, ah, ah, ooh. The bee thought James had burnt him on purpose. So it stung James right back on the nose. Eee! whistled James.
At last the trucks grew tired. "I'm winning," gasped Oliver. But it was too late. Oliver lay, bruised and bemused, bunkered down in the turntable well.
The twins left the quarry just in time. "Look out, Percy!" shouted his driver, and applied the brakes, but it was too late. "Percy, you are not to blame for the switch failure, but I do not run a jam factory." "Yes, sir. No, sir."
He rode roughly and often came off the rails. I warned him to be careful, but he took no notice. "Listen, Dookie, who worries about a few spills?" "We do here," I said, but Smudger just laughed. One moment, everything seemed safe, then suddenly... Falcon was derailed and hung dangerously over the edge. "He's bumped us!" screamed the coaches. "Let's pay him out!" They surged into Sir Handel and pushed him off the rails. Sir Handel was about to cause a great deal of trouble. "Told you," said Sir Handel. "Faster! Faster!" they yelled. "No, no!" wailed the empty trucks. "It's Peter Sam!" But it was no use. "Hurrah! Hurrah!" roared the trucks. Peter Sam shut his eyes. Beep, beep. "Steady, boy," checked his driver, but it was too late. "Sleepers and ballast. I'm off." "There's something hanging from the roof," shouted his driver. Peter Sam came out of the tunnel, a different-looking engine. He no longer had his funnel. They lumbered along as the insults continued. Then there was trouble. "Ah!" cried Sir Handel. "That was your fault." "No, it wasn't. It was yours." He rolled proudly towards his coaches. Then it happened. Shaking and spluttering, the diesel stopped. He drank 3 buckets of water and was just about to drink another when Henry let off steam. "Oh!" cried the elephant. Water went all over Henry. Poor Henry. "Oh!" wailed Scruffy. "I'm coming apart!" And he did. Then Thomas made his mistake. "Just like this," he boasted. A painter was on the ladder above the line. Henry's smoke blew high into the air. The painter couldn't see. Both he and the paint pot fell all over Henry. Poor Henry. "Well, you're not a pretty picture," sneered the painter. "There's no sign of a tail lamp," he puffed. He whistled, but there was no reply. Meanwhile, Henry had noticed something too. "My train's getting heavier," he thought to himself. "I'm slowing down." Then there was trouble. No one was hurt, but a strong smell of fish hung in the air. "Help! Help!" they wailed. But it was too late. Cried Bulstrode. "I'm sinking!" "Serves you right," giggled the trucks. "You were always barging in and moaning." He was in a hurry and being careless. He propped his bike against Percy's mail truck and rushed away. "Stop!" cried Percy, but Tom was out of sight. There was worse to come. Percy's driver hadn't seen the bike and he started away. "Oh no!" cried Percy. "Now there'll be trouble." And there was. Percy's driver quickly stopped the train. Everyone came running to the scene. Tom Tipper's bicycle was in pieces.